the format that we have, where the three sections. The first one is where we learn something new, and the second section is where we have a stimulating interview, and the third section is where we do questions and wisecrack. So today's guest is Radiowala Shrikant, and like anyone who's been in and around Pune in the last 15 odd years, since turn 6 at least, has definitely heard of Shrikant's booming voice, and he's like, I guess the voice most easily recognized in Pune. So though he claims to have never done any improv, we thought he would be a perfect fit for something like this, which is about thinking on your feet and playing around with voice and audio. So we requested Shrikant if he could join us for today's session, since we were going to read about improv and how improv is helping in learning. So we thought he would be the most appropriate guest. So welcome, Shrikant. This is the entire group here today. We had around 15 registrations, so I think most of them have joined. So let's get started. Like I said, the first section is where we try to sum up the article. This is the article that everyone read, how improv can open up the mind to learning in the classroom and beyond. So the first takeaway that we saw, which is very important from the article, was the first rule of improvisation. Yes, and right. So it's about being in the zone. You go with the flow and accept contribution without judgment. Personally, this has been something that's been really great. When we have done some of these ideation sessions and brainstorming sessions, we try to use some of these principles where you suspend your judgment for some time and follow this yes and approach. And being in the zone and going with the flow is something which is extremely important when it comes to ideation. And to be honest, I actually realized that it came from improv much later. I thought this is like a principle of good idea generation sessions, but later I realized that this was actually coming from the world of improv. So I was pleasantly surprised when I came to know about that. So that is a first big takeaway. And what it also does is it sort of gives you a sense of trust within the team, that yes, we all can help each other and grow. Speaking about growth, improv, as an art form or as a method, has grown by leaps and bounds in the last few years. Yes, I think we all grew up watching a show like Whose Line Is It Anyway, and it used to be this, this comic element and comic relief. That's what improv was all about. At least a couple of decades back. But now improv has grown, both in terms of practitioners of improv, people who are doing serious improv comedy, and what they are doing, where it is all about improv. But improv has also gone into the worlds of teaching and learning. I know a lot of schools, B schools and communication schools. They're all actually teaching improv and using these as a great tool for people to build the kind of things that I was talking about earlier, where you develop respect for each other and are learning how to build upon ideas. This article was interesting also in the fact that how improv is being used with the preschool kids and school kids. So that was quite interesting for me. But yes, improv has grown. Practicing improv is good for all. It hones communication for sure. You have to think on your feet, and you have to build on what someone has just said. It stimulates great amount of creative thinking. You cannot just limit yourself. There are going to be interesting topics that are thrown at you, and you have to come up with something not necessarily funny, but it has to be something creative. A lot of people, when we have done these improv kind of exercises in the past with first timers, there's this pressure that, oh, you have to come up with something really witty and really funny. it is not like that. Just the fact that you're able to think on your feet and continue the line of thought itself is actually a major task for most of us. Most of us who are not used to doing improv. So when you've been doing it for some time, I think that's when you can get to the next level and start thinking of doing things in a more funny and witty manner. But one thing that I can definitely vouch for from a personal standpoint is that it is great for teams. When you're doing something like an ideation exercise, the yes and approach, I think, just gets it right, and you don't end up censoring a lot of left of the field kind of ideas. You're not going to say, oh no, this is not going to work, because you're just suspending judgment to start with. So it's been great in my personal experience. So we thought we would just sum up this whole article in this infographic. We'll share this infographic on the group. Quick points in terms of what is the value of improv and the tenets of improv. Let's just let go of your agenda. We're all talking about how you should be active listeners and not having an agenda. I think you can actually start practicing it now, because it's much easier to say that. But when you're doing something like this, that's when you actually start practicing. This point about letting go of your agenda. So these are quick things which, since you guys have all read the article, you've definitely covered all of these things. We'll share this on the group so that you can use this as a quick reference guide, or even share it with other friends and colleagues of yours who probably have still not figured out the importance of improv. So that was our takeaways from the article. At this point, I will quickly check if anyone has any comments, any reflection that you have done. Shrikant, yes, we'll start.
If you can open your YouTube, or if I am allowed to share my screen, there is a video given by this guy. There is a TED talk given by this guy called Derek Sivers. Now, a lot of you may have heard of Derek Sivers.
Yes.
And he's given this TED talk called First Follower. I want you guys to watch that video sometime. We might do it in this session later if we have the time. But that is actually an excellent example of how improv does happen in real life without us even realizing. So do we want to do it's a 3-minute video. It's not too long, 2 minutes and 57 seconds. Do we want to do that now, later? You tell us.
Yeah, we've actually shared that video earlier in the group, Shrikant.
Wow.
So very appropriate one. Not with this specific group, but most of you who are on the Future Fitness gym channel on Telegram, you would have seen that video already. Yes, we're all big fans of Derek Sivers and that particular
perfect
video.
Then so that video itself is a perfect example of how you can bring the yes and philosophy into your daily life. When that guy starts dancing, there is one person, the first follower, who goes, yes, and let me join in. So that is the essence of improv. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Right. Handing it over back to you.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks. Any other comments, thoughts from the article?
Well, there are a couple of other things, but I think I'll do that as a part of the next segment, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, Shrikant. We'll just check if there are any other comments on the article from the other participants. If not, we go to the next section. All right. Let's move to the second section, which is the key section, where we have a little conversation.
Sorry, just to button. I wanted to ask Sirisha, because she formally, you mentioned some people do this as part of their learning formally. So I think Sirisha has done that. So I wanted to quickly check what her experience was and whether, what she got out of that whole formal kind of training.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this was when I went for my Fulbright fellowship at Carnegie Mellon. Right from day one, we were improv was part of the entire curriculum. Now all of us were going with 13, 14 years experience and work experience, and actually acting free and doing whatever you're told to do, showing high status, low status, all of that wasn't coming very naturally to us. But once when we started doing it, we were told three basic rules. I think most of it was mentioned in the slides that you covered. We were told three basic rules. One, say yes and the second rule was serving the narrative. So you serve the plot. It's not about your own agenda. It's not about what you want to speak, or it's not about you versus them. But there's a common narrative, and all of you are going to work towards it. And the third one was make your partner look good. These three were extremely insightful when we actually started working. We were working with startups, we were working with companies, we were interacting with leaders. But this whole process of using this as a fundamental approach to any kind of teaching and learning was exceptional, in the sense that we got uh, one, the entire environment became extremely collaborative. Second, we were looking at building, so the whole creative quotient of what we got out of every session was extremely high. And third, the whole communication channels between us, there was no block. So this team, the group that was there, was a group from all over the world. So it helped us break a lot of our cultural barriers, helped us talk the common language, and also start connecting with each other much more effectively in a very, very short period of time.
Yeah, I think that's the magic of improv that we were talking about. So thanks, Sirisha, for articulating that and talking about your experience. So if there are no other comments, let me go to the next section. So this is where we start interviewing Shrikant. It's usually the other way around. He's the one who is
I am in the hot seat
to people in to innocent bystanders. So it's the positions have
I'm
been
in the
reversed.
hot seat and slightly sweating.
All right. Yeah. So the first question, Shrikant, for you: what parallels are there between RJing and doing improv, and what is different? And here, let me just give you for the others, I'll give you a brief chat, talk about a brief chat that I had with Shrikant before this. So when I invited him to be a special guest here, his first response was that I have never done improv, and I don't want to do such a bad job in your session that the improv guys actually come and start beating you up. So I said, no, we're not really looking for an improv practitioner, but we are looking for somebody who has done stuff with audio. And when I said stuff with audio, it was like this, playing around with audio and improvising, thinking on your feet. Definitely not exactly what an RJ does, but in our mind, there were a lot of parallels. So we thought
there are.
This is a good question to get Shrikant started.
Thank
so
you.
Over to you, Shrikant.
One thing, your network, internet connection is a little spotty, so you keep breaking up. You might want to see if there is a better Wi-Fi spot inside your house where your or is it just my network? I'm not really sure. In any case, to answer the question, there are some parallels between RJing and improv, but improv is a very rigorous thing. Like I've seen practitioners of improv, and I've seen the kind of effort that those guys put in, and in comparison, RJs are extremely lazy. Now when I say lazy, I don't mean we are useless. We actually do put in a lot of work. 4 घंटे का जब show होता है, when we do a show for 4 hours, we are actually working 4 hours prior to that to prepare the show, because nothing that we say in those 4 hours is ever off the cuff. It is always prepped. It is not planned word for word, but it is prepped to an extent where we don't have to resort to saying stuff off the cuff. Because whatever we are saying is going out to a wide audience. So we have to make sure that everything we say holds some sense and is not a complete waste of time. At least that's the way I used to approach my RJing duties when I used to do the show MH935 in the evening, or Bumper to Bumper when I was in Mirchi. Both shows, my philosophy was the same. In the limited time that I have on air, I will make sure that I leave a sense of something with my audience. Now, that could be either where I'm talking by myself, or when I'm talking with a listener, or when I'm talking with an authority person or a celebrity or somebody I'm interviewing. The first case, it was pretty straightforward. Since I had already prepped, I didn't have to improvise so much. But if I was talking to a listener, I had to make sure that the listener came away happier than they were before they called me. That was the target of everything I did. So, in a sense, every call with a listener was not an information seeking initiative, but more of a collaborative conversation, so to speak, where both of us would come together and build a structure of whatever that it was that we were trying to discuss. So, sometimes the questions would be very straightforward, like what's the traffic at Chandni Chowk like? And somebody would call in and say, "Hey, Are, listen, the Hinjawadi guys have left office and reached Chandni Chowk. So Chandni Chowk is a mess right now. Ask people to avoid Chandni Chowk." Now here, I could stop the listener and say, what do you mean avoid Chandni Chowk? How do you avoid Chandni Chowk if you want to go from Hinjawadi to Katraj? You can't do that. That would be doing a no but. Instead, what I would do is, uh, yes, avoid Chandni Chowk, but yes, avoid Chandni Chowk, and while you're at it, figure out a way if you can reach the moon. So instead of yes, but, I would transform that into a yes and create something really stupid out of it. My show was known for kind of non-standard stuff and a little bit of stupid stuff, just to make the environment a little lighter, because people who were listening to me were typically going home at the end of a long day, and I didn't want them to strain their brains too much. So my content would always be a little on the lighter side, a little on the humorous side, and a little on the somewhat funny side. I'm not really known to be a very funny person, but I'm a somewhat funny person, a passably funny person. So that's how I used to try and collaborate with a listener who would call in. My inspiration for that was this show. I'm not sure if many of you have seen it. It was called Just for Laughs Gags. It used to come on Comedy Central and a couple of other channels where they used to play pranks. Now, this was the birthplace of Bakra. This was Bakra, MTV Bakra, before MTV Bakra. And this was run by a channel called Just for Laughs, which is based out of Montreal. The one thing about their pranks is those pranks were never insulting. Unlike some of the Bakras, or unlike some of the phone pranks that we've heard, these pranks were never insulting, and these pranks were never offensive to the people who were inadvertently caught in those pranks. These pranks always played something embarrassing on one of the actors, and never on the people who were unaware that a prank is being played. So the people on whom the prank was being played were merely spectators caught in a very awkward situation, but the awkward situation was for someone else. Now, that is the kind of improv that really makes people happy, where if you're not participating in the improv, you still get to enjoy it as a spectator. This is where the four quadrant structure comes into picture, where you're either a passenger or you are a collaborator. Now, when you're a collaborator, you need to be in the yes and zone. When you're a passenger, you need to be in a zone where you do not get affected by whatever is happening in front of you. So I know I have digressed a lot from the question, but I hope I made some amount of sense in, in this long ramble of words that I just put out. Harish?
Definitely, Shrikant. So I think we get what's different, and some of the parallels that you do. But some of you may not be aware of other facets of Shrikant. He's done a lot of things outside of RJing as well, and these days you also do brand consulting.
Yeah.
So are there any lessons that you've drawn from RJing and improv side of things that you've keenly followed, which you have sort of tried to implement or tried to use in other work that you do as well?
Absolutely. There is a lot of crossover between RJing and brand consulting, because at the end of the day, as an RJ, I'm representing a brand. So I am projecting a brand, which means I have to understand what the brand is about, and I have to completely incorporate that into my existence and into the persona that I project. So when I was when I was RJ Shrikant on the air, I had an element of the radio station that I was an RJ for. So Red FM, when I was RJing for Red FM, it's a very irreverent brand. It's a very in-your-face attitude wala brand. So I had to bring that irreverence and in-your-face attitude into my RJing, where under ordinary circumstances, I would probably react to a situation by saying, say, it's okay, it happens. In terms of the RJing aspect, I would probably go, all right, so this happened, what can we do about it? The yes and aspect of it again, which is kind of by the side, but it also applies there. So I had to bring in an aspect of the brand into my RJing. This learning is what I took into my brand consultancy aspect, where when I was consulting for a brand, I would typically sit down with them, and I would try and figure out a similar perspective for their brand, which could be adopted by everybody in the working for the brand. So what I aspired to do was give them something to emulate in a manner that they could understand. For example, and this is something that you might want to try for your respective brands that you work for. I used to try and get them to imagine the brand as a physical living human character. So when it came to Red FM, our most common example that we gave our listeners, our clients, our friends, and everybody who wanted to know was that Red FM is like Salman Khan of Dabang, Chulbul Pandey. So the way Salman Khan would react to any situation is the way Red FM was expected to react to any situation. So our the question that was foremost on our minds when reacting to anything was, what would Chulbul Pandey do? So suppose a listener would call saying there are potholes on the road. What do we do? Now, most people would say, ki, Are, call your cooperator, ask them to fill up the pothole. Or some good Samaritan radio station or entity would go and say, okay, don't worry. What we'll do is we'll try and figure out a way to fill that pothole. We'll probably do crowdsourcing of some sort and figure out a way to fill that pothole. What Red FM did instead was slightly different. Red FM went with an Artika thali and Nariyal and all of the Artika saman, and we did an Aarti utarod that pothole, which shamed the corporator into coming to the pothole and saying, okay, I'll get this fixed. And the next day the pothole got fixed. So the brand Red FM would come up in our responses. So in a sense, we would play the game, what would Dash do? Where Dash in our case was Chulbul Pandey. Similarly, if you look at Coke, you'll realize that everything that Coke does can be projected as what would Amir Khan do. If you look at Pepsi, the same thing can be projected as what would Shah Rukh Khan do, or rather the public persona of Shah Rukh Khan do. So every brand in a sense can be condensed into one human character that is popular, well known, and who has a predictable sort of course of actions. And this can be applied to almost every brand, is what I realized. And that is one of the principles I use when I'm consulting for brands, in terms of designing campaigns for them, or designing taglines for them, or basically anything to do with their day-to-day existence or marketing or corporate communication.
All right. Yep. Thanks, Shrikant. We'll move to the next question. I know Sirisha has posted a question. We'll finish the ones that we have and take more questions from the participants.
Sirisha, I'm already sweating.
Next one. so, so what helps you stay confident? I think the app question for your comment. Any tips for overcoming stage fright?
Well, here's the truth. I am never confident and I always have stage fright. Even as of now, I'm sweating, and it's not just because I forgot to switch on the fan. But the truth is, you don't have to be confident all the time to overcome stage fright, and you don't have to make an effort to overcome stage fright. If you're it's actually one helps the other. A little bit of confidence helps overcome stage fright. The most popular thing that you'll hear everybody say is, imagine the audience naked. The problem with that is, it causes me to go more into a shell, because I get extremely embarrassed when I see somebody else naked. And yeah, that causes problems in other aspects of life, but we are not going to go there. But yeah, what helps me stay confident is the fact that is actually Socrates. Socrates was the first person who said, I know nothing. I think it was Socrates anyway, but then I know nothing. So uh, once you've accepted that you know nothing, then there is literally nothing to fear, because the only way you can go from there is knowledge. So if you accept that you know nothing, then everything becomes a learning experience. And that's how I take all of my stage appearances, all of my interviews, all of my interactions, anything, all of my conversations, all of them are learning experiences. The three words that I'm never afraid to say are, I don't know. And these three are words that I have found a lot of people not willing to say, because they think it makes them lesser in some way. I don't know what, or maybe I'm assuming that. I don't really know for sure. But honestly, when once you say I don't know, there is no more stage fright. Because if you don't know and if you've conveyed that to the audience, then the audience immediately gives you a discount on whatever you do. कि चल ठीक है ना यार, बंदे ने बोला उसको पता नहीं है. The guy has already said he doesn't know. So we'll take him in our stride and figure it out. Regardless of how much of an expert you're supposed to be in all of these, the moment you tell people that you don't know, people are willing to make accommodations, like Harish did when I told him that I don't really know improv. It's not a trick, it's the truth, but it worked in my favor, because your expectations are already tempered, that this guy has no idea about improv, he's going to talk about radio, and we are perfectly fine with it, even though the session is supposed to be about how improv can help us learn and how improv teaches us new things, etc., etc. But see, I have already managed your expectations. So that's one thing. Admit to yourself and to everybody else that you don't know, and that basically gives you the confidence to go ahead and say, okay, let us learn together. And that again is the essence of improv. Okay, let us learn together.
I think that's a great answer there, Shrikant. In fact, when you were mentioning that, a stray question popped in my mind. Have you had an opportunity, or have you had any incident in the past where either a celebrity or a regular Joe was actually having the problem of stage fright on a call with you when live on radio? So did you actually have to coach someone to overcome their stage fright?
Funnily, with listeners, it is never a problem, because whenever listeners call in, they're always excited to talk. So they already know what they're going to say, or they already know what they have to say. Typically, it's an answer to a question that we've asked. So there is never really a problem in terms of content of what they're going to say. with celebrities, they are already coached and they already know what they have to talk about. So again, it's not a problem with them. The problem happens when you have non-celebrities coming in for interviews. So there was this series I did on the show called Phakta Lad Mhana, which is actually a snippet of a poem by a Marathi poet called Kusuma Graj. It's a beautiful poem. If you can find a translation, do look it up. I rate it on the same lines as Rudyard Kipling's If. And it's very inspiring. But the crux of the poem is the person the poem speaks about has lost everything in life, and he goes and goes to his old school teacher to tell him the tragedy that has befallen him. The teacher is so moved by his plight that he tries to give him some money, and the guy says, पैसे नको सर, थोड़ा एकटेपणा वाटला, I don't need money, I just felt alone, all I want you to do is put your hand on my back and say fight. So Bhakta Lad Manam is say fight. So I was looking for people who had tried single-handedly to change one aspect of society, one aspect that they found problematic. And I found this guy called Kailas Mari, who's actually a rickshaw driver. And what he used to do was he used to offer his rickshaw for free to anybody who was desperately in need. So if he found a pregnant woman walking on the road, he would stop his rickshaw, tell that woman, get into the rickshaw, I'll take you wherever you want to go, and I won't charge you a single penny for it. And he did that every time he saw someone in need. So if he saw someone hurrying for a job interview or waiting at the bus stand for a job interview, he would stop his rickshaw and take that person, put him in the rickshaw and take him to wherever that person wanted to go, not taking a single penny. Now, this guy was so into his philanthropy that he didn't even realize it is philanthropy. He just thought that it is something that he was supposed to do. Mind you, this guy is a rickshawala. He doesn't have a lot of income in the first place. Then I later found out he also collects and distributes food grains to people, distributes clothes to people after taking charitable contributions from wherever, and he's doing all of this through the goodness of his heart. There is no charitable trust or organization or institution that is doing all of this. So we somehow managed to get him to the studio and we sat him down for an interview. Throughout 30 minutes of the interview, the guy spoke for not more than 6.5 minutes. I spoke 24 minutes trying to get this guy to talk, and this guy just wouldn't. At the end of those 30 minutes, I realized that this guy is uncomfortable in front of a mic. So I moved the mic away. I took my phone, started the recorder, put it in his pocket, and I said, I want you to keep my phone for a few minutes. And I asked him a question, one of the standard questions. So tell us something about yourself. And I clammed up. I shut up. So the guy started with his typical laconic answer. He said, I am Kailas Mari, I drive a rickshaw. Of course, all of this was happening in Marathi. I'm Kailas Mari, I drive a rickshaw. And yeah. And he stopped. He was expecting me to ask another question. I didn't. The thing about silences is they make everyone uncomfortable. And if someone doesn't speak, you feel like speaking. And that made him speak. Once he started speaking, I didn't have to say a word. And after that, I got about 22 minutes of audio with me barely interrupting for a question, a follow-up here and there. Silence is actually the best follow-up that you can give when you're trying to get someone to speak. And this seems very counterintuitive, but you should actually try this. You know who tries this, who has already tried it and succeeded multiple times? Our mothers. If you have ever been caught by your mother doing something you shouldn't be doing, your mother never asks you a question beyond what happened. Or at least that's what my mother used to do. She would ask me one question, what happened? And after I had given my answer, she would wait. Then I would give a second answer. Then she would wait again. I would give a third answer. She would still wait. Then I would tell her the truth. So it works. Tried and tested.
Yeah. I think you've also sort of answered Sirisha's question to a certain extent. I think this is a great great story that you told us. So just finishing it there. Do you want to say anything else to address Sirisha's question there? Is there a link between improv and storytelling?
Yes, Sirisha. Improv and storytelling, there is definitely a link. In fact, everything in the world links to everything else. And this might sound like one of those airy philosopher type statements, but honestly, a lot of improv is the fundamental basis for storytelling, because in a story that you're trying to build, you're always trying to add something. So that's the and part. And you can only add something when your previous section, your foundation is strong, which is the yes part. So yes and essentially translates to build a strong foundation and add layers on top of it. So there is definitely a strong connection between improv and storytelling as far as I see it. There may be people out there who will say ki yaar fek raha hai ye aadmi, but that's okay.
All right. So coming to the next question, Shrikant, and we see this a lot these days where people have had to move into a remote working mode, from offices, physical offices. So a lot of video calls, Zoom fatigue is a thing now. So what lessons can people learn from improv in this age of video calls?
Okay. I would like to ask a question to which I would love it if everybody could answer in the chat box. Before I answer this question, how many of you are ashamed of your background right now in this video call? Just a yes or no will do. Well, that's great to hear. Ashamed of the Sanasi. Excellent. So you have overcome the first hurdle of this Zoom fatigue thing that most people are worried about. I don't know why we all assume that these video calls have to happen while we are sitting. If you're fatigued with the Zoom call, get up and walk away. Keep the camera on, keep the mic on, or whatever, just walk away. It is perfectly fine to walk away from a video call, because these meeting calls are no different from your regular meetings at the office, where even though you were sitting in a conference room, you still had the freedom to stand up and relax your legs. And I'm assuming that was the case, because in the radio station that I have worked in, the radio stations that I've worked in, we were never confined to a chair. We were always given the freedom of walking around, because there are people for whom walking around somehow stimulates the brain cells. I'm one of them. I can't sit and think. I need to be constantly moving to come up with ideas. I don't know where it has happened, but my brain has made that association that I need to be fidgeting to come up with something. So that is one thing I would definitely ask you to do. It is not necessary that you do it, but if you're the kind who can't sit still like me, then please feel free to walk and move about. There are no established etiquettes for video calls yet. There will be in another 6 months, but this is the time where we get to establish our own video call etiquettes. Who's to say that walking around with a stress ball in your hand while the video call is on is not okay? Now, you could either take this as pushing certain boundaries, or you could take this as innovating certain things. But the truth is, I am simply asking you to be comfortable in your own skin. Secondly, um, try and mess around with some of the video settings. Now, of course, if somebody's presenting, it makes sense to have the person who's presenting in the foreground of the screen and everybody else on tiles in the side. But sometimes try using uniform tiles. Sometimes try using the tile layout. Sometimes try using the flickering tiles, unless you have some sort of epileptic disorder, in which case you shouldn't be working on something that strobes on your eyes. But what I'm trying to say is try fidgeting around with some of the settings. Maybe some setting, maybe changing the setting once in a while will get you more glued to a video call or something. Honestly, I am not very qualified to answer this particular question, because in video calls, in group video calls, if I am not called upon to speak, I simply put on my headphones, turn off the camera, and roam around the place doing my own thing, probably a couple of chores here and there. Because thankfully for me, my ears are disconnected from my hands because of my work in radio. So I can do stuff with my hands while listening intently to whatever is happening in my earphones or my headphones. Right now, I'm sitting because me being fidgety is not a good look for the call, because I'm supposed to be the person everybody is staring at. So, Sanasi, you were saying you were worried about the foreground. You don't have to.
All right. I think being comfortable is probably the biggest thing that I take away from what you just spoke. So next question, Shrikant, your favorite improv performer or performance or show?
There is only one. I mean, this is not even a question. There is nobody. Please tell me you can find better people than Drew Carey, Colin Mockery, Ryan Stiles, and the lot at Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I will take you wherever you want to go on my own expense. That lot of improv performers are people who essentially introduced me to the concept of improv, taught me everything I know about improv, which is very little, to be honest. And they honestly spawned an entire generation of improv artists in India. Improv has been around for a long time, and these guys have also had people they looked up to. But then for me, these are the people that I look up to. Um, and there is another person who's not in this list. Of course, there is Stephen Colbert, who used to perform at Second City in Chicago. I've never gotten a chance to see him at Second City in Chicago, but I've heard a lot about it, and I've been trying to look up Second City performances, but I've been quite lazy. So that's another person. So the team of Whose Line Is It Anyway, the performing team, and Stephen Colbert, these are the two people that I would say qualify as an answer to this question.
Okay. And the last one, something you recently said yes and to.
My wife. Although she would object to me calling her a thing, but then if I am to objectify a woman, I would much rather it be my wife. Okay, bad joke, very sad joke, terrible joke, Shrikant, shut up. So I constantly say yes and to everything that comes my way, because let's put it this way. I am a person without a job. Most of my how do I put this? Most of my living is based on projects that I pick up. If I say no to a client, that essentially means I've lost an income source. So whenever a client comes to me with a proposal, or whenever I go to a client with a proposal and the client suggests a change in the proposal, I will never say no. I will say yes. And what we can do is this, in which I go back to the original proposal. So if I'm just glad my previous client is not on this call, or anybody related to that. Let me check the list of names. Yeah, no, I'm safe. Huh. So sometimes a paying client has to be accommodated. they may have some really ridiculous requests. Graphic designers and copywriters will know exactly what I'm talking about. And those requests are not really easy to fulfill. And you can't really say no to them because they are the one paying out the bucks. They are the one paying out the greens. So what you do is you say, yeah, we can do that. And what we can do is, and then leke ghumao. Karna padta hai, you have to do it. So yes and is something that helps not only in collaborating new ideas, but also bringing clients around, very literally around, back to what you initially suggested. Because see, honestly, what I believe is not that I am always right. What I believe is I want you to think about this at least twice before I accept your suggestions. A lot of times what happens is clients or anybody that you're giving your work to might want to send back changes because they think they have to, simply out of a sense of reactance or out of a sense of I don't know, maybe positioning themselves as the client. I don't know what it is, but I have seen this happen a lot of times where I have delivered a perfectly uh, good, acceptable, whatever, right to the structure suggested piece of work, and the client has come back with a really ridiculous suggestion. Something as ridiculous as, that inflection on that particular voice you did needs to change. Now, this doesn't really warrant a response or a feedback or a change or whatever, but they'll send it back just because. At such times, yes and comes in very handy. So you send them that and send them another example saying, yes, I've done this for you. And I've also attached another additional take that you might find interesting because it goes well with the emotion. The second take that I've sent is the original take that I have sent. And the client has accepted the second take. And I'm not kidding. This has happened.
Wow. Great story. Great story again, Shrikant.
Thank you. I'm just make sure that this story, I don't know how, but I hope this story doesn't reach that client. Everybody who is on this call, this story does not go beyond your ears. You do not get to share this with anyone. This tape should self-destruct in the next 5 minutes.
we'll see how that can be done.
Just kidding.
All right. So thanks, Shrikant.
My
That
pleasure.
was the interview section with you. If anyone still has any questions, you can post them in the chat, and we'll see if we can accommodate any questions in the last 2 or 3 minutes. We have the next section here, and this is going to be open for all. So now we'll have the other participants also speak up, and this is the section where we have some questions and wisecracks. So the first one, and you can answer these in the chat. These improvised scenes became the trademarks of the famous movies they belong to. So can you identify the movies? You can post them here, and if not, we have Shrikant who has already 3 answers. So yeah, you can post your answers in the chat.
Correct. Sirisha is right on the second one.
Sirisha says second is Pretty Woman. Yeah.
The fourth is something that
you're gonna need a bigger boat.
I know this one, but I just can't remember where it's from. Oh wait, I think I know. Yeah.
Yeah, Joel.
Yes.
Joel, I think has got all 4. Yeah.
Is Joel.
Yes. Yeah. So the first one was Jaws. So it was considered to be a very serious movie. So the actors were asked to add some improvisation wherever possible to make it a bit more spontaneous and see if it can be lighter. Similarly, the second one, the Pretty Woman story is very interesting. Apparently, Julia Roberts would be very sleepy at the start of the shoot every day. So this was supposed to be a way of waking her up. The jewelry box snaps closed, and it was supposed to be a not a very heavy jewelry box. It was never going to hurt her, but it was meant to snap her into waking up from her sleep. The scene from Shining again. It's probably the trademark scene from the movie, and of course, Taxi Driver. So for the next one, we want to have somebody volunteer. So somebody who can talk to Shrikant, and we'll do a call for 1 minute, 1 to 1.5 minutes, and somebody who can volunteer.
We can go on until you say stop. That's not a problem.
Yeah. So the scene is that you call Shrikant, and you can talk only in questions. You're going to only ask questions to Shrikant. Shrikant, you can also respond in questions if you want to make this more interesting. So Any volunteers? If not, I'm going to pick someone, or I'm going to pick on someone.
Come on. I have lots of practice. I have to warn everyone. I have lots of practice because this is exactly the kind of conversations I have with my wife. We ask each other a lot of questions. Who was she? What was she doing?
Okay. Manish is ready to volunteer. Manish, you can unmute yourself and,
Hiya, Manish. How are?
How did you become a radio jockey?
How did I become a radio jockey? How did I become a radio jockey? Is there a way to extract memories from brains?
Why did you become a radio jockey?
Why did my mother not stop me from becoming a radio jockey?
What did you gain from becoming a radio jockey?
What all treasures in the universe can you think of that cannot be gained by money alone?
What did you lose by becoming a radio jockey?
When does Micah close their admissions every year? Do you have any idea?
Who told you to go to Micah?
Nobody told me to go to Micah, but do you know that Micah is one of the premier institutes for communication sciences?
Why did you go to your wife's Micah?
Do you know that your fathers-in-law, typical fathers-in-law, can be very persuasive?
How did you get convinced from him or her?
Well, when fathers-in-laws, when your fathers-in-law or when your father-in-law asks you to come, do you really think you can say no to them, to him, to them?
Why were you not able to say no?
Why do you want me to not stay married?
Who told you to stay married?
Why shouldn't it be my own decision to stay married? Why should someone be telling me to stay married?
Who is telling you?
That's what I'm asking. Why should someone be telling me to stay married?
Who gave you that option, first of all?
Why should somebody be giving me an option to stay married? It's an option I give myself. And why shouldn't I give that option to myself?
What other options do you have?
Why should I even consider any other options when I have such a wonderful wife and such a wonderful daughter? What sense does it make?
Does your wife agree to that?
Why shouldn't she?
Did you ever ask her?
Why should I need to?
Why don't you think you should ask her?
Why should I need to ask her if she wants to stay married to me? It is not a road. Why should that be a road that I should even consider going on?
Why haven't you been asking questions to people?
What questions should I be asking people?
Why haven't you been asking those then to people?
Okay, yeah. Thanks. I think at this point, I'm going to put an end to this. This was great, Manish. Thanks
Thank you.
for
Shrikant, if I
putting
offended
this.
you.
Thank you, Manish. Those are some really interesting questions. I hope I managed to answer the questions while questioning you back.
Yes, we could definitely pick something there. Great.
That was fun. That was fun.
Okay, so for the next one, I'm going to need a few more volunteers, at least 4 to 5. So again, if I don't find someone volunteering, I'm going to just pick people. So yeah, anyone who wants to volunteer, just mention in the chat so that we can get started.
Guys, you better volunteer for this one. This is going to be really fun. I can vouch for it.
Some people who are really, really good with puns. They're on the group.
Sirisha, there is a game coming up designed by Harish and Ramanand.
Yeah. So let me tell you what what the next activity is. The topic is the habits of a time traveler, and we want you to create a coherent story by contributing one sentence each that starts with the last letter of the previous sentence shared. Okay. So yeah, at least 4 to 5 volunteers. If you can, pass it along, will you actually come up with a coherent story? And we've already hit 8, which is what we had planned this call for. But this is a very interesting thing till now. We're going to, and this is the last activity. So if we're going to, just quickly volunteer, or I'll have to pick names.
The beauty of this particular topic is that you don't have to worry about what tense you're speaking in.
Yeah. So we already have one volunteer. Yeah. You can unmute yourself, Nikhil.
I'll be another.
And yeah. Who else? Sirisha, 3. Manish. Okay. So let's get started. And in case anyone else wants to join, you can just mention here and unmute yourself and join this group. But let's go, Shrikant. You start. First sentence from you. I'll see if I can scribe it while you are while you guys are actually talking.
Oh man. Okay, use the turn on the captions.
Yeah, that's going to be a completely different fun story. All right, should I start? Tell me when to start and I'll start. Wait, did I lose you guys?
You can start, Shrikant.
Okay.
No, I was on mute. You can start.
I think I met her yesterday, but I can't really be sure because it may have been the day after tomorrow.
Tomorrow she will be another place. You never know when she's going to reappear.
Reappear? Do you think she's no longer alive?
Am I next?
Alive? I thought she was dead long time back.
Kites in the sky make me long for her every time I see them fly. But then I remember Kites was also a Hrithik Roshan movie and I get depressed.
Depressed she would surely be, traveling between places, traveling between zones, not knowing what is today, what is tomorrow, what was yesterday.
Yesterday night, I met her and she was preparing to fly kites.
Kites is something which we used to fight, which we flew together a lot of times on the beach.
Ankita, go with H.
I can always go back and fly kites with her again.
Never mind that she didn't really know how to hold a kite, but she was always enthusiastic about it, except that she was scared that I would disappear in one of my time traveling dimensions while flying a kite, and she would be left holding the string.
Strings are something which hold us with all the people around us.
Us and them, that's the question. Do we time travel or does she time travel? We would never know.
What is all this with time traveling and her? I'm getting lost.
Lost we are all. Lost we are all in this world of time travel.
That's okay. Time travel, L. Let us all take a break and start thinking about whether it is a good habit to fly kites. Because although kites can fly high in the sky, we all need to plant our feet firmly in the ground and not go soaring and disappear.
Really? But I thought that was the point.
All right, I think this is great. This is going great, and if I let you guys go, I don't think this is going to stop because you guys seem to be having a lot of fun. We are also having a lot of fun.
I am enjoying this.
So,
totally.
Yes. But yeah, we have overshot our time, and I don't want to, extend this too much. Shrikant, you've been very kind to actually join us for this call, and gave us a lot of insightful comments, and we got a sense of what arjing is all about. Vicarious way of learning, I guess, for all of us. So thanks a lot, and yes, that's all from our side. In case anyone wants to have a last parting shot, before I let Shrikant have the last parting shot, anyone else has a comment, you can go ahead. Otherwise, yeah, Shrikant, stage is yours. That's okay, Nikhil. I think it was fun.
Right.
You guys were all
In
having
fact,
fun, and we were having a lot of fun watching you guys.
Is an added stress factor, so don't worry about it. The whole point of the exercise is to get used to the yes and kind of way of thinking. So you guys did absolutely brilliant. I enjoyed doing that, creating that story with you. I might even write a short story on those lines soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Shrikant. You wanted to say anything else, or any
just a
last
couple of
parting
things,
comment from you?
especially about how to deal with the fatigue of the Zoom fatigue that you mentioned. I just remembered something. The
Right.
easiest way to deal with Zoom fatigue is to remember that everybody is having Zoom fatigue. So the moment you start feeling fatigued on a Zoom call, try saying it out loud. You will find that a lot of people agree with you. And if a majority agrees with you, just agree to disconnect the call and reconnect later, because a Zoom call doesn't have to go on and on like a stand-up meeting usually does at your workplace. The beauty of a Zoom call is you can disconnect anytime you want and blame it on the internet connection. Except if you do it together collaboratively, then it doesn't have to be an internet disconnection. It can be something that you arrived at together, which is also a win. Because when you collaborate and arrive at a decision, it is always good for the bonding of the team. Or some crap like that. Come up with whatever you want. If you get fatigued, disconnect is what I'm trying to say. Secondly, the yes and exercise works only when you're trying to collaborate for ideas. Do not try the yes and technique if you're discussing facts. Like if you're in a board meeting where revenues are being discussed, please do not try and use the yes and technique, because it is meant for ideas and opinions, not cold hard facts. You can't say yes and if someone says the sun rises in the west. It doesn't make sense. So please be careful where you use the yes and technique. And finally, you don't always have to be witty. You don't have to be funny every time you use the yes and technique. Yet the yes and technique is basically for you to learn. The yes and technique essentially puts you at the lowest rung possible and prepares you to accept any new knowledge that comes your way. That is essentially what it is. Improv is not something to be glorified. Improv is something that we use on a daily basis. And you will realize this the moment you catch yourself saying yes and trust me, you say yes and more times than you think in a day. Just watch out for it, stay alert, and you'll realize that you say that at least 3 to 5 times a day. You may say it with your wife, you may say it with your boss, you may say it to the next rickshaw wala you meet or the next cab wala you meet. So have fun, use improv, don't use improv, enjoy, don't enjoy.
Thanks, Shrikant. I can, at least for myself, state, and that's a fact, that there is definitely no question of having any fatigue in this call with you around. But we will have to put an end to this, and we will end this call right now. Thanks a lot. It was great having you, Shrikant, for our Future Fitness Gym call. And great to have all the participants as well. All the participants who are, especially participated in the activities as well.
Thank you, everyone. It was an absolute pleasure and absolute honor to be here. And thank you so much, Harish and Ramanan, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.